Good morning, everyone, and happy November. It's Friday, November 1st. I'm John Weigell with Ben Berkley, and this is the Hustle Daily Show. They've threatened to fire employees that don't come back to the office. They've retired olive oil drinks, and now they're not charging for alternative milks. Starbucks is going through a lot of changes under its new CEO, Brian Nicool, and today we're going to break down those changes, their business performance, and speculate on what the hell is going on over there in Seattle. We'll sip on that delicious venti in a bit, but first, let's give you the news in business and tech. To kick us off today, you should beware if you're not in boarding group number one, as I am often not. American Airlines is experimenting with new boarding pass reader tech at gates in Tucson, Arizona, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Washington, D.C. The update will alert airline staff when anyone tries to board before their particular boarding group. They've tested the alerts on over 4,500 flights this month, much to the possible embarrassment of the passengers involved. As a boarding group 4, 5 to 10 range, this is horrible for me. And I would think that you sympathize as well, Ben.
You know, I understand that they want to make sure that people are paying the fees for their better seats and the better boarding and whatever. But as someone who's been to Tucson, I feel like it's not okay to slow people down from leaving. Like anything that adds you in 5 seconds to their exodus is borderline like human rights concern.
Yeah. I think that should be in the bylaws of the Tucson airport, the get me out of here immediately clause. No delayed flights anymore. That would be a perk.
Yeah. And also, I'll say it just in case we get like angry emails. Lovely city, actually. I just grew up in the rival town, so like I have to say these things.
I see. Listen, been there. Love Tombstone. Fun time.
Also, maybe buy boarding group 1 tickets so you don't get beeped at.
Right. Get the first class ticket. Next over to tech, Meta is kind of smashing it right now. In a quick update, their profits went up 35% in Q3, but, hold on, big but, and yet its stock went down after announcing those big gains, which is very confusing when you think about it, but the people are not responding, it seems.
I mean, what's happening here is relatively simple because they are making a lot, but as they're ramping up their AI infrastructure, they're spending a lot. Like they spent over $32 billion in the last quarter. And that kind of spending has investors on edge.
Yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act, it seems, that they have to do. But it doesn't seem like that AI spending is going to stop anytime soon. So I guess investors will just kind of have to get used to that whole thing. Up next, Brazilian soccer superstar Neymar Jr. is aiming to build himself a home in Miami, Florida. He bought an empty waterfront lot for $26 million in the 305, along with approved plans for a 13,000 square foot house. Good luck building that. I also looked it up. It's about over an acre, which is around the size of a soccer field.
Oh, I love that. Of course, he can afford it. He's making like $110 million per year to suit up for his Saudi league team. So, you know, he's doing fine.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing in the Saudi leagues. I think he'll be okay financially from this.
I mean, he's not even the most expensive player on the planet. Like Cristiano Ronaldo is making closer to $300 million a year for a different Saudi club, which is just obscene. But, you know, I think we're about to talk about a number that's even more obscene.
Yes, we are. Which brings us to Russia. Russia slapped a fine on Google, and it's an amount that I don't think I've ever heard or read before. It's 2.5 decillion. And this amount is for taking down Russian government-run YouTube channels after the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Just to put a button on this, that's about 36 figures in 2.5 decillion. So no chance this is going to be paid, but interesting that it came up.
Yeah, it's like really nice that the Russian judge who settled this got their kid involved in like international headlines. Because clearly it just had a kid pick out a random number. It's like 2.5 trillion, I'm pretty sure is what we're looking at here.
Jeez.
So there's a lot of money.
There's a lot of money. And finally, the newest Call of Duty Black Ops 6, that is 6, is out. And it took the title for biggest launch in the franchise history. The series has now sold over 500 million copies, and that kind of puts it in the same range as Tetris and Pokemon all-time titles. And yeah, they got a ton of sequels. Can you guess how many mainline games they have in total, though? I'll reveal that answer in the bottom of the ninth of the pod, and that's after the main story. With smaller budgets and sky-high expectations, growth is feeling pretty painful right now. But HubSpot just announced more than 200 major product updates to make impossible growth feel impossibly easy. Like Breeze, a suite of new AI-powered tools that help you say goodbye to busy work and hello to better work. Breeze Intelligence to give you the richest, most comprehensive picture of your prospects and customers, and reimagine marketing and content hubs to attract and convert more leads and send your revenue soaring. Visit HubSpot.com/spotlight to learn more. And speaking of the main story, Starbucks has been all over the pod this week and all over our feeds everywhere. Tons of updates are coming daily for the Coffee Superstore, and we need some time to track what's happening and how all these changes might affect them in the future. So, Ben, what's really been going on lately with Starbucks?
Everything. Truly a headline a day from this company lately, which is interesting and also makes sense because what we recently saw were their full year financials, which kind of tell the story that everyone was expecting. Specifically, if you look kind of like the last quarter, their expectations were not good. They fell short of those. Their sales are just like really slumping. Their earnings were like more than a fifth short of where analysts thought they would be. We're now like 3 straight quarters down. And so we knew this.
Yes.
We also knew that they brought in their new hotshot CEO, Brian Nicool, and he had this very tall task at hand. And so I think what's interesting is not only have we seen the depths of the hole that they are in, we are starting to see this week more of the plan to dig themselves out of it.
Right.
And I feel like consumers will really start to see it and feel it on November 7th because there are a couple big things going on.
That's right. Yeah, because on November 7th, as reported earlier this week, they are discontinuing the oleato, the olive oil drink that was said to cause some digestion problems for some. They're going to nix that on November 7th. But what they're also nixing on November 7th, which is another development that came out today, is that they are actually getting rid of higher pricings for alternative milks. That's your almond, coconut, oat milks that I probably have every time I drink a coffee or a tea. So that's kind of helpful. And the funny part about that, Ben, is actually a lot of this is changing because the CEO has declared that he wants to kind of put Starbucks back to their roots in terms of being that neighborhood cafe instead of being a basically fast food restaurant that serves coffee.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you really listen to him talk, the thing to take away is it's that simplicity, kind of like this back to basics of like what got Starbucks to where it is, making it that neighborhood space. And I think that so much of it is like simplifying the menu. He mentioned that only about 50%, I believe, of their transactions right now are like 4 minutes or less type of situation, which suggests it's kind of an ordeal to get what you want out of them sometimes. And so really it's just about like reeling it back to simplicity. And it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And we'll see if it works.
Right.
Clearly, it's probably not going to get worse than where they are right now because things are feeling kind of desperate there to the point that they, kicked their CEO out and then spent an ungodly amount to bring in a new one.
Right. And you got to think of this in the two ways that there's company-based, right, what's going on internally at Starbucks, and then there's externally kind of what we as consumers are all feeling. And it seems on the consumer side, they're trying to really be consumer darlings. They're doing a couple things like this, like the alternative milk thing, that are actually really good and a great deal for a lot of people that have been paying for these for a long time. But internally, there seems to be a bit of a struggle still because we've also been reporting consistently on a lot of companies doing a return to office policy. And it seems that the corporate workers aren't exactly the happiest these days about being told if they don't come back in at least 3 days a week that they're going to be fired. So it seems there's a lot of internal turmoil, but it seems the customers will be benefiting, at least in the short term.
Yeah, I mean, I got to give him credit for already having a lot of work to do and then stepping into the current corporate minefield of return to office politics, especially when you've got a CEO who's, I believe, very notably working kind of remotely himself. But this is the time to make drastic moves. And I think that, when you have results that are accompanied by the word disappointing a lot, you start to really change things. And to your point, they are really focusing on the customer, and they're doing these things. Like they also announced that they are not going to raise prices in the next fiscal year, which that's needed.
It's huge.
And I think it's going to help. There's like that old Onion headline because they were growing so fast that they were putting a new Starbucks inside the bathroom of an existing Starbucks. And so to get back to that point, they're really going to have to get back to what was allowing them to grow so explosively across the globe in, the past decade.
Yeah. And it seems like a balance because they want to grow. They want to keep doing that, but they also want to be a nice town coffee shop. Getting the orders out in less than 4 minutes doesn't really sound to me like a local coffee shop that like you have time to wait around. It sounds very like fast food centric. But what are we going to be looking at going forward, do you think, Ben? Are there any things that you're watching kind of moving forward on this?
Yeah, I think there are two really interesting storylines to me, other than just like, are they going to get back to where they need to be as a business? But, I think that as much as they're speeding things up, they are also trying to become that community hub again. So it's like you're trying to both get people in and out and also get them to stay at the same time, which is an interesting two things to try to do at once. But in our newsletter this week, we covered another smaller coffee chain out of Michigan that is rapidly expanding. And that's because people are really desperate for that third space, that social setting that is not their home, not their workplace. And the thing I'm watching is Starbucks, they're better positioned than anyone to win at that. That's how they got here. They were that for people around the world. Then they strayed from that path a little. So if anyone can kind of fill that void right now, it's unfortunately not libraries because they're never going to get the funding to do this. It's going to be Starbucks. And if not them, I think we're going to see other chains that are going to start to like challenge them for supremacy. So going to be really interesting to see if they can kind of claim the third space victory. But then the other thing I'm just really interested in is this feels like a really interesting litmus test for CEO value. Because like Nicool is viewed as this rising star. He turned Chipotle around and has this whole like food world like buzz about him of like he's like
the aura, I guess you can call it.
I would definitely call it that. I mean, it's also like dude's pay package is worth like $113 million.
Woo.
And so, the thing that I'm looking at is it ever worth it for one executive to be paid that much? Because my mind goes back to our feature from last year about whether it's time to automate the CEO. There was this like AI CEO who performed just as well, if not better than a human one in this test run. And, Nicool feels like a really interesting test of this because he's in this really high profile spot in a really highly watched company. He's making a lot of noise really quickly. And we're going to have a pretty good way of tracking his value over the next year to see kind of how much Starbucks has turned things around.
Yeah, I mean, you really got to shell out that extra money for the rock star CEO nowadays if you just want to have the gravitas of that. That's why they keep us around, Ben.
Yeah.
They see our gravitas and aura and they say, they're personality hires. We can't get rid of them.
Yeah. And also they know that the Tucson Tourism Bureau is coming hard for us. Like they are going to try to hire us away now. They'll be like, those guys, they love this town. They just won't say it out loud. And we're going to have them speak on our behalf.
And just to leave you with our final fact of the day, in case you were wondering the number of mainline Call of Duty games, it's at a rousing 24 games. That's a lot. Over $500 million in sales there. So not surprised at that. But yeah, there's some info to leave you with today. All right, and that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for tuning in to the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot podcast network. Our editor is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. And we got tons more tech and business coverage in our newsletter, of course. If you're not subscribed, go sign up at thehustle.co/email and throw us a follow on Instagram at The Hustle Daily.
If you're struggling to keep up with all the latest innovations in tech and what they'll mean for your life, TED Tech has you covered. Get ahead of the curve with digestible downloads on some of the biggest ideas in technology, from AI and virtual reality to clean tech. Find TED Tech wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I've been listening to this awesome podcast lately. It's called Hustle and Flowchart, hosted by Joe Fear. And it's brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. The Hustle and Flowchart podcast with Joe Fear is all about how to build a business so it gives you the freedom and fuel for your life. You can join Joe as he discusses systems, mindset tweaks, reframes, and strategies for entrepreneurs and really anyone, to be honest, to enjoy the process of being in business and also having fun. This isn't just for the entrepreneur looking to make $1 billion business, but it's also for somebody who's looking to build systems that work for you so you can make more money than you need just by working part-time, essentially. I was actually just listening to an episode he had on Kareen Walsh behind the app Hey Kareen, and Kareen talked a lot about how to scale your business effectively, especially if you're just a startup, especially if you are just an app startup specifically. It's an awesome episode. I would recommend it to anyone. You could check them out and you can listen to the Hustle and Flow Chart wherever you get your podcasts.